white girls who are sitting at their graduation engaged. And the question came up, well, why is there not the reality for black women? I know y'all not gonna like what I gotta say, but you know me, I'm gonna say it anyways. First and foremost, black women are above reproach. If it don't validate us or excuse our bad behavior, we don't want to hear it. Instead, we'll say, well, men do it too. Secondly, we'll find every excuse in the world to validate why we don't want to be married or why we don't want to be in a relationship. Well, they get cheated on. Well, they do this. Well, they do that. But then we have all these standards for men, and we're still actively seeking for men in the midst of our hurt while inadvertently telling them to go to therapy. We do not practice what we preach. Thirdly, the independent woman is a myth. Actually cared about being independent and it was something that made you happy, you would not have all these standards to negate your independence. Nobody wants to relinquish power. You'll find every excuse in the world to not be submissive and wonder why white women can get away with their bad behavior. We take everything bad from white women, except for the fact using marriage to our own benefit. But you'll run to the child support office, though. Argue equality against men, and the only time we actually want to be equal to men is when it comes to degenerate behavior, hypersexuality, abusing or abandoning children. Even when it comes to the gold digger conversation, what you don't see those other women do, even when they are just screwing men for money, is bashing men and inadvertently making men feel like they're not important. Also, too, telling them that they don't need men. Psychologically, we have been taught to disassociate ourselves, and even in that Malcolm X quote where he says the black woman is the most disrespected, he also says to be near your man. Because who taught you to hate the very race that you're supposed to be with?
You guys have any questions before we move on? Anything you want to chat about? No, we good? Yes, sir?
Do you think that like reparations should just go to like one like group, or like should it target like people that are in the same kind of like socioeconomic like group? Because
that's an interesting question. What do you mean by that?
Well, like there are like white people that have like been disenfranchised like recently, like
recently is the key. Recently is the key.
The country like deindustrialized, right? So like a lot of people in like manufacturing jobs and stuff, like
right.
Were affected.
But so to your question, I think you have to understand what the word reparations means first. So reparations, you are repairing something that you have broken. You are paying for something that you were supposed to pay for. I'm not saying that there aren't people living in America today who are suffering and are going through pain and strife because of what's happening when it comes to, the machines taking jobs, factories becoming industrialized, etc. But reparations is a specific conversation about a specific time in America, and that is black people were slaves. You know what I mean? I've even heard people say like, oh, but there were some of the Irish who were indentured. Like, yeah, slavery. Look at the numbers, look at the time, look at the level of work. You could not work toward your freedom. For most black people in America, this was a time when you lived and died as a slave. And so that's what reparations is about. And so I hear what you're saying, but I think that's a completely separate conversation that needs to be had about the now. Because if you are not careful, what you then do is you combine everybody's suffering into the same ball, and you make it seem like all injustices have the same weighting, and they don't. Just like crimes. Theft isn't the same as murder. We don't try them the same way. And as much as there is a white person who's suffering today, I feel for anybody who's suffering, because I know what it's like to be poor. I know what it's like to suffer. I didn't come from a wealthy family. We struggled when I was growing up. But I also understand that there are levels of that suffering. And so sometimes white people, it does block a white person because you go white privilege, and the person goes, I'm poor and I'm white. Where's the privilege? White people are like, I wish I could activate my white privilege. I wish I could do it right now. White privilege! Give me something. I get that. I get that. Trust me, I get it. It is hard to accept that you have benefits because of the color of your skin if you cannot see the benefits that you have. But the thing I try to explain to a person is, think of it more like golf. Don't think of it as privilege, then think of it like a handicap. Right? In golf, they acknowledge that you are in a position where you need so many advantages to be competitive in the game. Right? So what they say is you have a handicap of 15, so that means like you're going to be hitting from this tee and you get more chances to get the ball in because we understand the position you're in. And if you're a black person in America, from slavery, from day one, the number of injustices that have held black people back in America amount to an insurmountable, like you look at black people's freedom, you look at black people's land, just land alone. The amount of wealth you can acquire over time if you own land is exponential, because you have the land, you have the fact that you can borrow based on the land, you have the fact that you can use the money that you have borrowed to grow more wealth, you can use it to grow your family's wealth. Just taking that away from black people alone is crippling them. And so you combine that with slavery, and then you look at Jim Crow laws. You didn't let black people in America live in the areas that they wanted to live in. They couldn't get loans from the banks that they wanted to get loans from. And then on top of that, when they started getting the loans from American banks were found to be giving them higher interest rates when in fact they were the same risk as many of the other races that they were giving loans to. So when you combine all of those things, I think it's safe to say that black Americans have a conversation that they need to be having with the United States. Doesn't involve me, doesn't involve white people, it's like, yo, American government, meet the black people. That's it. Have that conversation.
I'm working on the grocery stores and the mixed use and the bike trails and the multifamily and the senior living and all the things that are possible that you can do with 95 acres of land that's right on the MARTA systems and very, very close to downtown Atlanta.
Yeah. Yeah, the transportation part was very key, because when you put train stations and you build around them, obviously development is going to stretch. Again, going into that partnership with Wells Fargo, right? I mean, this was a $1 billion commitment to, help finance this. And as I'm reading that press release, I see the word it could open up or could generate a $1 billion in financing. And I ask, why do you trust Wells Fargo this? Because, Bishop, their past is what it is, right? I mean, I'm sure that they're trying to change the company, but this is the same bank that was denying black mortgages in 2020. 47%, they were denying half of them, right? Or nearly half. This is the same bank that had to settle charges in 2012, paid $140 million settlement for claims that it had high fees and high mortgage rates for black people. And this is a bank that has $1 trillion in assets under management, 140 billion market cap. And yet I see the word could generate $1 billion. Why not it will generate $1 billion? And why do you trust Wells Fargo? Tell people why they should, again, trust Wells Fargo, especially after the history.
Oh, I would never try to be Wells Fargo's voice to tell people why they should trust Wells Fargo or any other bank. That's not my role in our relationship. You have to do due diligence. You do business with people, not buildings. I met Charlie Scharf. He was their new CEO. I found him to be believable and committed and focused to make the corrections that preceded his leadership. We set out to do a partnership that, at least regardless of which direction the bank goes in the future, at least $1 billion of those dollars have been sequestered and set aside to accomplish some of the many tasks that I have for it to do. That does not mean that there won't be mistakes made by any bank. I can't vouch, especially a bank that has 250,000 employees. Somebody's going to do something crazy. Okay. So I am not here to represent Wells Fargo. I am here to represent our people in an ongoing endeavor to build equity, to build opportunity, to build the commodity of affordable housing. And
a lot of shit pissed me off. Like, we got, women going against the grain, arguing with, I'm going to say black men, but a little bit of every man. Don't get it twisted. This is not just a black issue with women not following the traditional role and going towards being modern and destroying marriages and stuff like this, destroying relationships, going straight towards being monetized and getting money from any situation, dates, foodie dates and bullshit like that. This is nothing, just particularly about the black community. But when we are trying to build a stable society, marriage and monogamy and having just one partner and, having kids and stuff like that, this is important to us, a healthy, growing society. Two-parent households usually result in kids having a higher education, better jobs, stuff like this, decent quality of living and a better quality of living and stuff like that, decent jobs and stuff. But the messed up part of all this is we're still wrestling each other down the road of life. We didn't see plenty of generations come and go, and they weren't able to do it quite as good as we thought they should. Especially in the Americas, we could say, back in Africa or Jamaica or wherever uh, country you say you're from, that people uh, did it better back then. But we are on America's soil now, and we're talking about what's going on in America. So, as we're still trying to grow the community as best as we can, instead of everybody just in chaos and turmoil, we're still wrestling with the household. The men are usually still wrestling with the household and can't seem to get that in line. And I was just making a video about Tyrese, breaking up with his girlfriend and stuff like that. And, men are usually the romantics, and we want to have a relationship, a decent relationship with a woman, and, go down the road of life with this woman. That's why men don't leave marriages. That's why we don't file for divorce most of the time. We're trying to work it out, or trying to see a solution to a problem. Sometimes the problem ain't just, that clear cut and simple. So it is what it is. But I love how Trevor Noah had to address this question, and I was talking to my mom about this. And, she was breaking down how California and San Francisco are supposed to be giving out their own reparations, and they're supposed to be blessing every black from this year to that year, whoever was living in San Francisco. And she was reading it, and it said because when blacks were in San Francisco in the 60s, the government went into San Francisco, into black businesses and destroyed their business. So they feel like they need to give back to the black community. I was like, what did you just read to me? Like, you're telling me that they knew the government went into black businesses and purposely destroyed them, like Black Wall Street. They did it in San Francisco as well. They did it in Rosewood as well. They did it in a whole lot of black towns that just seem to have water over them now. And it was a government funded effort to stop these black people from achieving any sort of wealth, any land, businesses, any ownership of anything. And this is in the 60s when we actually had the right to own these things. They already had laws to prevent us from owning things all the way up until probably like 1920, you know. So if they ain't coming up with Jim Crow laws and this and that and not enforcing the laws, the amendments that they already put forth, like even when they abolished slavery, they didn't enforce that law for 10, 15, 20 years. That law wasn't enforced. Then they came up with Jim Crow laws to stop that. But I digress. Reparations in San Francisco is given to all the black San Franciscans because they went into the black businesses and destroyed the business. When we hear about um, the Western world, we think that people on the West Coast or people in the North didn't have to deal with this type of stuff. But clearly, the whole Americas have to deal with the government choosing to destroy black businesses, take black land if it's from the Ku Klux Klan. Um, Actually, the Ku Klux Klan and the Democrats was like hand in hand, but it's some fucked up history when it comes to the Ku Klux Klan in America and them never being really prosecuted for or persecuted for anything that any crimes that they were committing, and burning down churches and burning down people's houses and running blacks out of towns and stuff like that. They were actually created to um, terrorize blacks so we wouldn't own anything. And if we did, they'd come take it and move us, displace us. I mean, they did it to the Indians first. This is just, you know, one of them things that the world was doing before we could say we became modern. You know, we back in 1800s, you could just take some pistols and some guys and take some land, and it'd be your land until somebody say otherwise. You know what I'm saying? And usually there wasn't no real government uh, enforcement to say that that is or ain't, and we didn't just bury these dudes in some shallow land over here, in a shallow grave. So back in the day, that shit was happening regardless. And if you weren't able to defend yourself, which we were in America, we thought that America had the laws to protect us, and we couldn't even own guns, so it didn't even matter. Like, that was a lot. It's a lot. Just a lot of history to break down. It's a lot of bullshit. But at the end of the day, like I said, I digress. They paying people reparation. They're not even paying people. They're not paying people. And most likely black people will never see a dime of reparations ever, because we already did the math. It'd probably be 19 million for per black in America. But I digress. Black people will never see reparations. It'll never happen. You'll never get it. And they're gonna come up with any tactic and laws and anything to not give black people anything. They gave Indians the most bullshit ass land out the way, all the way in the mountains somewhere, and they still was pushing them even further into the mountains. And believe it, Ripley's believe it or not, man. These people do what the fuck they want to do, and if they got gunpowder, they gonna do it. Silence is acceptance, and we ain't having it. Like, comment, subscribe.